We got another fantastic interview this week, and we have a bunch of news from manager hirings to schedule changes to new team news. You don't want to miss this week's episode of the Indy Ball Report podcast. Yeah, right. We're back again. Episode number one. I was about to say 100 and something, but it's actually 202. That's going to take a little bit of time to get used to.
That's a habit. Just a habit.
Exactly. I mean, it's only like I've been saying 100 and something for about 2 years now, you know. I don't know why I'd be in that habit of doing it. But, you know, either way, I'm Nick. He's Will. Will's back. He's back from the desert. We had to send a car for him, so it's all good. But,
yep. Yeah, I did make that drive all the way back because JFK Airport's bad, but more on that later.
Yeah, I know. I may have to go ahead and buy him some sort of service animal so that way he could try and get through JFK a little bit quicker and they won't pull that crap with him. I mean, just think of it. We get you like a Labrador and put a vest on him. You'll have to get some blind glasses and one of those walking sticks, but you know. Once you get over the moral quandary of pretending to be blind, you can enjoy the fast lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could just take my new 1-year-old pit bull, but I don't think he'd be a very good service animal.
Be touch and go certainly, and I think that may slow you down in the lines too. But you know, but we'll discuss more on flying later. What we do have is a bunch of news in the Frontier League, the Atlantic League, and the Pioneer League. And we also got the second half of those double-header interviews we did. I guess it would have been last week still, or I guess 2 weeks by the time the majority of people are listening. First half was Pete and Kabili, which was a fantastic interview. And the second half is Matt Callahan, the Vice President and General Manager of the Tri-City Valleycats. Obviously, you'll hear that one in a little bit, but first we got to get to the Frontier League and their news, and that's going to start in Windy City. We got two things for Windy City. One's a staff hiring, one's a schedule change, and the staff hiring is their pitching coach. They welcome in Jarrett Wright, 11-year veteran of the Major League, started Game 7 of the 97 World Series as a 21-year-old rookie. So pretty high-pressure situation to be thrown into. He's going to be the pitching coach for Richie Sexton and his Windy City Thunderbolts. I don't know much more on his actual coaching experience. It also seems like it's a situation where they're kind of, you know, friendly, and it's like, hey, you want to do this? And it came out, why not? So, Jarrett Wright, pitching coach, Windy City. Any thoughts?
No, I mean, it sounds like a solid hire. Again, it seems like to be I guess in Indy ball, it's a little bit rare to find, it's rare to find staffs with consistent major league experience, especially, in the Frontier League. So, I mean, not that like the major league experience is like the end all be all, but at the end of the day, I think it's, you have guys who have been there on the biggest stage before and they know what it takes to get there. So I think, Jarrett Wright sounds like a pretty good hire to me as well. And like, I mean, 11 season big league veteran kind of speaks for itself, but it sounds like a pretty solid hire to me as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it seems like a solid one. I don't really know what to make of it. There's no real coaching experience that I can at least see from quickly looking over the baseball reference page or anything of that sort. I mean, obviously had a good career. I mean, you don't sit around for 11 years in the major leagues not doing well. But, I mean, like, I don't really have too much more to add on it until I can, realistically you see how he does as a coach, because obviously playing and coaching is significantly different, but it is a major league heavy staff, which I think works as a positive in a way, because it definitely gives you, I don't want to say gives you more credit, because that's not necessarily true, certainly, but it also just adds a little more credibility, I think, to players when you hear something like that maybe if you were kind of like, I don't know about this guy, what has he really done? you have a guy that's like, well, I've pitched 11 years in the major league, so maybe you want to hear what I have to say type of thing. And at the very least, when you fill out your staff with former major league guys like Sexton, like Wright, it definitely helps in promoting the team too, right? So, it's definitely an interesting hire.
Yeah, I think the promoting the brand is a pretty, it's a good point. And I think, of course, nobody's going to the ballpark to watch Jarrett Wright be the pitching coach, but I think at the end of the day, it could also, help attract some talent as well. And that being a really attractive thing and something that a lot of coaching staffs in the Frontier League don't have. So I would say that overall looks like a positive.
Definitely does. And the other news out of Windy City is we have a slight scheduling change here to their June 4th game. The June 4th game has been moved to May 25th and will now be played as a day-night doubleheader on the 25th, featuring the first game at 10:35 in the morning. Not at night, although that would be pretty cool if they started a day-night doubleheader with the night in the beginning and the day in the second half. That'd be kind of cool. Honestly, I almost would love to see that as a promotional thing. I don't know how the attendance would be per se, but
yeah, I think there might be more players on the field than there would be in the stands.
Well, I'd hope there's not that many players in the stands, but
okay, you know what I'm saying.
I know, but I had to take advantage of it. Any case, but I think it would be kind of cool. The St. Paul Saints did something like that not that long ago, with like a day to night game where they started play when it was dark out and then went with the sunrise. But that's a whole nother thing. That's unrelated to the fact that after the 10:35 game against Tri-City, they will play a 6:35 game against the Gateway Grizzlies. So it is two teams in one day as part of this double header. Now the current schedule is they're just going to be off on that 4th date in June. So the 4th, no games now. The 25th is a double header with a school day in the beginning and a night game in the end between a couple of different clubs. So it is definitely an interesting thing. It's definitely weird if you're Gateway, because now all of a sudden you have to just kind of go to Windy City for one game, just randomly in the middle of May. It's like second week of the year. And then you go to Gateway again, like a week later, roughly. And you just play two games and you're off on Sunday, which is definitely odd in baseball to have off on a Sunday. But either way, it's it's an interesting setup there. And I feel like there's some marketability and some promotional opportunity here with like 3 teams in one day type of thing. I'm not creative enough to really figure it out because I've been thinking about it. But yeah, I am very interested to see if they could swing some sort of marketability from this.
Well, I agree. I don't know, I guess, the promotional reason behind it at all, but it is interesting, I guess is the best way to put it, but I still don't know the full reason why. I don't know.
I'm just going to jump. I think it's probably just they had a scheduling conflict. My guess would be because they're on the road that week too. Like if you click the schedule in the tweet, we'll link the tweet in the show notes. That day of the 4th, that would be their last home game until June 13th. So it'd be a solid week from 5 through 12 where they're not at home. They're not playing any home games. So I'd imagine there is something going on in the ballpark or they're trying to schedule something because obviously you don't just leave it open for a whole week, So if it's something like that and whatever they have planned, whether that be a concert on that date, whether that be getting some sort of showmanship thing, I don't know what that may be, maybe like a BMX type thing or whatever, it's going to take some more time to set up. So, if you have a 6:00 game on Saturday and then a standard 1:00 start on Sunday, that 1:00 start could go to as late as, say, 4:30, 5:00. If it's a long game, that may kind of make it very difficult to set up. And so if you're able to kind of get that open day where now it's like, okay, we can start to set up on Sunday so that we're ready to run on Monday or whatever it may be, it helps out a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reasoning. But I just think there's some marketability on that 25th game of being able to say like 3 teams one day. How often are you going to be able to see this?
The answer? Never.
Yeah, it's
well, I wouldn't
rare.
say never. But I've never seen it, at least.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen it. I remember seeing somewhere, me commenting on it. I think someone else said that one other team was doing something similar to that this year. So
the Frontier League?
I may have been the Frontier League. I don't know, or had done something like that before. I just had never heard or seen this before, so it just was kind of like an oddity that I definitely wanted to point out.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, certainly quite a unique setup, that to put it mildly.
Yeah, definitely. So, on that note, we have, one thing is technically Frontier News, but it does include, actual Gateway in it because, and I guess we'll go to that, it is the Frontier League Tryout Camp, which is actually a really nice logo. If you look at here's the deal behind the, Tryout Camp. It's the 30th annual tryout camp. Is going to be held Monday, April 24th and Tuesday, April 25th at GCS Credit Union Ballpark in Sauget, Illinois. That is the home of the Gateway Grizzlies. All 16 teams will be there. Multiple workouts. Scouts from major league clubs there as well. Representatives from other independent leagues as well. You can register at frontierleaguetryouts.eventbrite.com. Link in show notes for anyone curious. It's the same thing as pretty much every year. Workout starts at 9 on Monday. Running drill, fielding drill, throwing drill for infielders, outfielders, catchers, batting practice for the position players. Pitchers will throw 15 to 20 pitch bullpens on the first day. Managers put together a list of who's invited back for inter-squad game the following day. After those games are done, 30-minute break. Clubs will prepare for the draft. They draft. We all know the drafted players have a very high very high miss rate because it's kind of like they're obligated to draft people. So they're kind of taking the best. Sometimes you find good players, sometimes you don't. That's kind of the way these things work. It's better than nothing, and it certainly gets you in front of people. They list off some guys that have been signed from the tryout in past years that have gone on to Major League Baseball organizations, guys like Josh Smoker, guys like Chris Smith, Robert Stock, Nick Duran. I'm not going to try.
Don't even try.
Yeah. It's Chris J from Seattle. We'll go with that. If you're interested in the tryout camp, go there. Standard rules apply as far as turf shoes or molded cleats, aka no metal cleats and no seeds. If you do any of that, you're going to get gunned. So don't waste your money by bringing seeds or metal cleats because you're just going to get tossed from the tryout. You will be
removed at gunpoint.
You know what? I respect them. They're upholding the rules at that point, and you got to respect it. So.
Yep, enforcing the rules. I mean, obviously not too much to add, but I think that it's certainly a good opportunity as it is every year. It's not like it's a new thing, but we'll say logo looks really good. I totally agree. It almost seems like a waste for just the tryouts, but I guess, whoever did the graphic design on that, really good.
Yeah, the graphic design's been a lot better as of late, honestly. And this event's also starting at $75, same pricing as last year, it looks like. But yeah, no, I really do like the tryout camp logo. Like the arch in there with the baseball flying over. The baseball flying over is almost like getting some some inspiration from the Rockland logo where you got the boulder ball going through there. So I definitely like that. It's honestly, it's just really aesthetically pleasing. I'm gonna have to go ahead and steal that later on to put in the graphic, but yeah, overall pretty good there. So on that note, we go to the last bit of the Frontier League that we have, and the last bit of news we have before the interview comes out, and then we'll be back to go over the Pioneer League and Atlantic League after that. But on Thursday morning of a couple weeks back, of course, this was the 12th, so about a week ago, the Otters added Rick Corte to the coaching staff. Now, I know you're wondering, who the hell is Rick Corte? And he is a former CEO, president, and director, or managing director of the Hindenhain Holding Group. He he managed 9 separate companies in that capacity over his time there. And long and short is he's a business guy. And for whatever reason, he has been added to the Otters coaching staff as a, quote, character coach, helping players and coaches set personal goals and become better men, both on and off the field. And he's going to kind of do something in the room. I don't quite know what the hell that is. But he's currently a professional speaker and mentor, which is a funny way of saying he gets paid to talk, living the dream that we all have. And
yeah, I wish we got paid to talk. We'd be really good at it.
I mean, really, especially if we're just allowed to go off on tangents, because, that may take us a little bit of time to get used to going off on tangents.
Damn good show, and sometimes we go on tangents.
Exactly, it's perfect. And so anyway, Rick Corte is here, and I assume he's just going to kind of be here. Just kind of.
Well, I think it looks like it looks like he's more along the lines of helping players getting ready for the workforce, like at the as far as if, of course not really helping on the baseball end of things, but hey, if you're trying to enter the workforce, I can help you do that. And which is good because a lot of guys, they're knowing that their indie ball career is probably kind of winding down, and are going to have to get a real job. And so maybe, I don't know, some of them might have been drafted out of high school and they never went to college, and so I think having a guy who could help with certain things like that could be really useful. So I think it's an interesting idea. It's a position we've never really seen before, but I think there's some value in it.
If we're talking seriously, yeah, there's definitely value in it, because going from a transition from playing baseball to, the workforce, there are a lot of skills that you can market that are translatable to the two. However, the thought of Rick Corte kind of acting as a quasi or proto Grim Reaper is just hilarious to me, where you're at your locker one day, you're getting your glove ready, you're getting your bat ready, put the pine tar on, whatever it may be. And then just out of nowhere, you get the tap on the shoulder. It's Corte going, so why don't we go ahead and talk for a minute? That's going to be horrific.
It'd be a good preface to somebody getting cut.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like, hey, me and Andy want to talk to you for a minute. Do you mind if you just come in here? And at that point, you just got this look like, oh, shit.
Hey, man, you're 2 for your last 25 with 14 punchies. Have you ever thought about what you might do when your baseball career is done?
So I hate to break it to you, but you're just not good at the game anymore. So we're thinking
82.
Yeah. You got an ERA above 7, son.
Now, you could also, playing for Empire State is also an option.
So he really is the Grim Reaper now. He sent him to the land beyond death.
No, he's like death. He's like Death from Family Guy.
Really, Christ! Oh my God! But practically, I get it. It's just a very odd thing to announce. This just seems like the kind of thing you use to pitch to players, but you don't really announce. I don't really know why you would announce that. It's kind of funny. I just didn't expect this.
Why did they announce? Why did they put a whole press release together about it and put the most important part of this buried in the 6th paragraph?
Yeah. Another paragraph probably this players want professional advice while preparing to enter the workforce, whether that be for a job for the offseason or post-playing career. Yeah, that really is buried in there. So
that's what I'm saying. It's certainly someone who knows a lot about media. Myself, not, but
Oh God, but any case, so that's Rick Corte news. Other bit of sadder Evansville news that came out on last Friday, a week ago today. Evansville lost their radio analyst and brief time bench coach in Bill McKinnon. He passed away at the age of 90. He worked in baseball for 70 years too, so he knows, he lived a full life there, player, coach, scout, manager, broadcaster, integral part of the Otters experience, I suppose would be the best way of putting it, having been there for some time. So I just want to mention that, because when you have people that are known in the independent circle, it's good to mention them in any sort of news. So it's just good to mention. So just want to bring it up, even if it is a shitty circumstance.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a guy that worked in Bill McKeon, working in baseball for such a long time. So certainly sad news, and will be missed.
So on that note, we'll go to something a bit more, I guess, happy and a bit more exciting, which is the interview we do have ready. It is a nice interview with the vice president and general manager of the Tri-City Valleycats in Matt Callahan. Very, very happy that Matt took the time to come on the show. He also helped set up the Pete interview, so very thankful for both of that. This interview, it's a lot of just talking about that whole transition to the Frontier League, why the Frontier League, a lot of good information like that, and, you know, the greater Albany region's baseball kind of influence that the Valleycats hold over it. So, I guess enough explain the interview, and the best way to explain it would be, that was kind of a train wreck right there. I'm going to cut that and move. I don't really even know where I was going. It was kind of like when you're a running back and you go in the pile and you're just trying to desperately find a seam out of it. That's what that was. But so enough explaining the interview, because better than explaining it, it's just letting you listen to it. So, without further ado, here's our interview with Valleycats Vice President and General Manager, Matt Callahan. We're back again with another interview in the long-running interview series here on the Indy Ball Report. And this week we have another Tri-City Valleycat member. This time we have the Vice President and the General Manager of the Valleycats, Matt Callahan. How are you doing today?
Doing well today, guys. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you taking the time coming on the show. So I guess what we're going to start off with is, what's baseball like in the Albany region? Because I know for us, we've had this huge demographic shift as everything's changed. And we went from more of a New Jersey, New York audience to more of a Midwest frontier kind of footprint audience. So for people that are kind of unaware of the capital region or greater Albany region, what's the baseball culture like? What's it like up there in general?
Yeah, the baseball culture in the capital region, you know, Albany and Troy is kind of our main footprint. It's really healthy, starting at the youth level. And I think, as you've probably seen, or at least I've seen in the Northeast, I can't speak for across the country, but I don't know that there's as many kids playing Little League and sort of that entry point, but I think the amount of kids that stick with the game and are playing a lot of baseball and some of the travel and elite teams has really seemed to take off around here, and it's produced some high quality players. The high school programs, a lot of them will play sectional games or regional games here at the ballpark, and upstate New York and the capital region has actually had a number of players over the past 5+ years get drafted, and some drafted in the first round. Garrett Whitley was a first round pick going back a handful of years. Michael Kennedy actually pitched here in a high school all-star game, and then was drafted by the Pirates, I believe, in the 4th round of the 2022 draft here. So you don't think of upstate New York, especially when you look outside and it's 27 degrees or whatever, as a hotbed for baseball activity, but there's a lot of quality players around here. A lot of people are passionate about the game, and fortunately for us, that extends to Valleycats baseball as well.
Yeah, definitely. I totally get that whole perception basis that your general region has, because New Jersey has kind of a similar thing. I mean, it's a balmy 42 right now here in the Garden State, and no one ever thinks of us as a major baseball state, but then you start to look at the talent and it's certainly there. So with that, I imagine a lot of those grassroots organizations, a lot of those kind of youth baseball programs, that's a large part of what you guys do. It's a large area of what you kind of focus on, if not necessarily for promoting, but certainly reaching out to those types of players to try and get them maybe not necessarily involved with the organization, but get them out to the ballpark and things like that.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that's such a huge piece of filling the ballpark is group sales and trying to be good ambassadors for the game of baseball. That's something that we've always strived to do. And whether it's hosting some youth tournaments and travel tournaments, which we do each year, or working with the high schools to get some games here on the field. We share the facility with a community college, Hudson Valley Community College, and have a good relationship to build on with them. And over the years, we've gone out and renovated Little League, and youth fields, youth softball fields, and done some big community projects in that regard. So that's always been part of our DNA. And, I think that, helps with our fan base, it helps with the interest, and, hopefully that just allows us to be a good part and part of the fabric of the baseball community up here.
Absolutely. And being part of that community is extremely important, as you just said there. And so I have to ask the question of, when you guys found out that, the New York Penn League was no more, what was the general reaction from the community? And I know that the Valleycats in particular were very focused on making sure professional baseball remained in Troy, Albany area. So I kind of wonder, just what was that immediate outcry from the area and the community?
Yeah, that was a tough circumstance, and a very challenging thing for our staff and our fans and ownership to go through. I think the first thing we heard from fans was just support, and hey, we're with you. Hey, please don't go anywhere. We hope you stick around. And I think the overwhelming outcry was of support for, the Valleycats in general and maintaining baseball here in the capital region. And, then from there, as time went on and there was a lot of misinformation out there, were we going to be affiliated with somebody else besides the Astros? Were we going away? Were we going to be a collegiate wooden bat league team? Were we going to join a professional league? And I think once we were able to do our due diligence, and we had a lot of conversations, both internal and external, and felt like the Frontier League was the right landing spot for us. Then it became sort of re-educating the fans and just making sure they understood that, hey, the league is different, the format is different, but it's still going to be high quality professional baseball, and it's still going to be the same Valleycats experience, and, fun night at the Joe, the same ownership group, largely, and, the same group of folks that have been in the front office for a long time together are going to be running it. So, really trying to get people to understand that. And of course, in the midst of all the COVID, fatigue and confusion and changing regulations. So 2021 was, 2020 into 2021 was a challenging year, to say the least, and I think we've gradually sort of been building back to a more normal operation and experience, and trying to continue that as we move forward.
Yeah, definitely. I remember that period right outside there, because what surprised me the most was the local ESPN affiliate have reached out to have us on to kind of explain what the Frontier League was and everything. So I do kind of remember that whole kind of like, okay, this is what the independent league baseball is, this is how it's different. And so I have one final question about the affiliate to independent switchover, and then I'll toss over to Will to see where he wants to go with the interview. But do you think being an Astro affiliate kind of made it a little bit easier of a transition, as opposed to having a more local team like, say, the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Mets or something like that, where there isn't as many fans of the major league club that would be there, that would be more torn up about it, as you would be if you were, say, closer to the parent club?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think certainly if we were a Yankees or a Mets affiliate, that would have been it would have been a different experience. But I think that people had become accustomed to watching Astros players come through here, and the track record of guys that came through from the Altuves and Springers to the Jeremy Peñas, and I think that there was an attachment to that, and to seeing those guys get to the next level and then ultimately produce on the biggest stage. So I don't think it was a lot easier. It was definitely a challenging conversation with some of our fans, and we had said from day one that the league we were joining was going to have a more experienced player, a lot of guys that had been at a higher level in the New York Penn League. So we were expecting a more polished, overall form of baseball. Even though you may not have the trajectory of that first round pick, as frequently as you would when you were affiliated. So, that was sort of the message that we put out there, and that we tried to educate our fans on. And I think largely that's been the case. And, people have seemed to enjoy the baseball, as they've come back to the ballpark and gotten to know some of the players. And, when we were affiliated, you didn't have a player very frequently come back for a second year. If you did, then that was not really a good sign for him. Yeah. So I think that's been helpful with fans being able to build some relationships. But, certainly the Yankee fans, there's no love lost with the Astros, especially after everything that happened in the postseason. But I think that it was still a challenging transition for our fans, at least at first.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. You get used to seeing a certain product, you kind of expect, like, I don't want any change. You get a little spooked by it, and I can definitely get the fan base having that reaction. But it's a good thing that there's no Yankee fans on this show. There's currently a Red Sox fan being interviewed, a Red Sox fan that's bound to do some interviewing, and then me who doesn't like the DH at all. So on that note, I'll toss it over to the other Red Sox fan on this show and let him get going on this on his line of questioning.
Sounds good.
Well, as wrong as your DH takes are, Nick, and we don't need to rehash that at the moment.
I'll leave it for now because we have a guest here.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be courteous to the guest, Nick. So Matt, I guess specific with that whole transition, and when it came out that the teams that were not going to have be an affiliated franchise, it seemed like Tri-City was like probably, out of all of them, like one of the top two, maybe even the best market for a place to go. Did you guys kind of have like your pick of the litter as far as options? And I guess what options were considered on your end?
Yeah, I mean, once we were informed, and I mean, really, we found out on social media that we weren't going to have an affiliation moving forward, which is probably a whole separate podcast, so we won't get into that. But
that was nice.
Yeah. So we talked quite a bit internally, and reviewed our options, and Major League Baseball had put forth the draft league to the Penn League teams, and we didn't feel like that was the right fit for us. We felt like we had established a commitment to professional baseball, and that had always been kind of steadfast for our ownership group. So from there we really started looking at the main independent leagues, partner leagues, quote unquote, and obviously the American Association doesn't have a footprint out here, so that was, a pretty quick internal conversation. Just, geographically, it didn't make a ton of sense. And, from there, we had conversations, with and around the Atlantic League and then the Frontier League. And, ultimately from, our market and looking at what our fan base was used to playing in, starting in mid-June, playing a 38-game season, we felt like the Frontier League was a good match. Obviously, we added 10+ games over the past two seasons with the travel team, but we felt like the footprint of the season and trying to share the facility with the college, just it lined up better with the Frontier League than the Atlantic League. Obviously, looking at the composition of the players as well. There was a lot of factors that went into it, and I think both leagues have a ton of pluses, but we just felt like the Frontier League was the right fit for us.
So that's interesting. I guess a part of that decision that I never really considered as far as what the fans were used to, and of course the start of the New York Penn League, kind of in the middle, second week of June, I believe, if I'm right on that, second or third week of June. But
yep.
I think so that timing as far as the later start date of the Frontier League season, that was a major role in that decision, you would say?
Yeah, it was a factor for sure. I mean, April baseball, and we do host or help facilitate some high school games during that time, as well as the college playing during that time. But I mean, that's that month's really a flip of a coin in upstate New York. I mean, you could have a 60 degree day, or you could have snow and rain in the 30s. So we didn't feel like adding games in April and extending later into September was really a good fit for what we had established, and that was definitely a factor for sure as we were considering those options.
That's interesting. Okay, and I appreciate you sharing that perspective, because again, that's a part, and it's probably my fault for not really thinking of that, but it's something, I guess, a factor in that that I hadn't really considered. But also, and I wanted to ask also from like an organizational standpoint, I guess, are there things that maybe that whether it's promotions or I'm not sure, I guess you would have a much better perspective on it than I would, but things that you can do as a partner league team that is not directly affiliated with a major league team that, say, you couldn't do as a Houston Astros affiliate, and you guys have more freedom to do stuff like that, more unique things?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously when you're, when we were affiliated and we were part of minor league baseball at the time, and, now all of that's sort of funneled even closer up to Major League Baseball's oversight. There's a lot more infrastructure. There's a lot more, I guess, I don't know if rules and regulations are the right way to say that, but there's definitely a lot more guidance. And I think there's pros and cons to that, right? I mean, I think the level of accountability at times, with the way the teams operate was a positive with those rules and regulations as compared to some partner league situations that I've seen. But to your point, I think you do have more freedom to think outside the box, to bring in different partners, whether those are vendors. When we were affiliated, we had very specific merchandise licensing requirements. We had to meet uniform on-field licensing requirements. So I think certainly there is freedom to cultivate different relationships and to get a little more creative with some of that stuff, definitely.
And when you guys were kind of looking for, okay, who is going to be like our inaugural manager, and you guys ended up, of course, settling on Pete Incaviglia. And so such a huge name in the Indy Ball world. I guess how did that whole search and decision come about?
Yes, we had a pretty extensive interview process, and I did the first round of interviews for all of the candidates, and the Frontier League office was great in providing some recommendations both inside and outside the league, and we had recommendations. Obviously, we have a pretty good network of contacts throughout the baseball world from all our time in the affiliated game, and so we had people being recommended through those contacts. We had people reaching out to us, given the the state of the game at that point and how many people's jobs and teams were in flux. There was a lot of managers and coaches that were looking for an opportunity. So, we had some really good conversations with a number of different candidates, some with extensive independent experience and others with strictly affiliated experience. And, at the end of the day, we had essentially narrowed it down to two candidates. And, we felt like Pete's track record and experience both as a player and a manager and building rosters in the Atlantic League and American Association and the relationships he had with a number of big league organizations and the track record for sending players back to affiliated opportunities. We felt like it was a good fit, and we've had 2 good seasons and look forward to hopefully taking another step forward here in 23.
And Nick, I'm not sure if there's anything you wanted to, I guess as well, that transition kind of end of things as well.
Not so much transition, but I do have to ask the question that was, I guess, about the highlight of last year, or at least the big newsmaker from last year. And you mentioned a little bit ago, not too many first rounders are coming through, but there was one of serious note in Kumar Rocker last year. So I kind of have to ask, because we asked Pete a bit about this too, about him as a player perspective. But from your perspective, what was it like to try and get Kumar to Tri-City? Because I imagine that was a total organization coming together to try and get him there.
Yeah, Pete and I were talking around this time last year, and we started kind of kicking the idea around. I think that was around the time where Kumar had come out and said that he wasn't going back to Vanderbilt and was going to pursue an independent opportunity. So, we started the conversation. Pete had experience in similar situations and had relationships with some of the folks at the Boris Group. So, he did a great job kind of putting our hat in the ring and, starting to move the ball down the field with those guys. And then, as things progressed and, we were getting asked obviously a lot of questions and, hey, what about this? Hey, where do the players live? What does this look like? What does that look like? Are you willing to help, with the media in this regard? Are you willing to do this? And, we just kind of continued to try to put our best foot forward. And, I think Pete's relationship, I think our facility and our relationship within, or our reputation within, the game of baseball helped to come together. And we were expecting, Kumar to go pretty high in the draft. I think, higher than he was getting projected in a lot of the mocks, but, to see him go 3rd overall and come off the board that quick was fantastic. I think that was better than certainly I thought was going to happen. So, we were thrilled for him, and, it was a great experience to have him here for a couple weeks.
Yeah, I imagine it was a great experience to have. And, likewise, I imagine, like I said, a lot of the credit goes to just the whole complete structure. And that was one of the things, that we had previously asked was in our interview with Pete was, what's that structure like? And so I guess I'll pose the question in a different way to you, but still asking the same thing essentially, which is what's the dynamic like in that front office, in that organization? Because from the sounds of it, it sounds like all you guys are baseball guys that know what you're doing and all are working towards that common goal. And so I'm just kind of wondering, what's the dynamic like? What's it like to be a member of the Tri-City Valleycats, I guess, staff?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting transition, obviously, for us. Rick Murphy, our team president, has been in the game for 30 plus years, and he was the general manager before I became the general manager in 2016 or 2015, I think it was. So there's a tremendous amount of both baseball and operational experience in our front office. And as we transition to the independent model, we had a solid background and understanding of the game and the talent and the player procurement process, but we still had to learn quite a bit, and had to learn all the kind of ins and outs of the medical side and the contractual side, and putting a coaching staff together. We were heavily involved in a lot of the administrative and logistical things when we were affiliated, from hotels and travel and housing and meals and stuff like that. But to take on the entirety of the baseball operation was a big change. So, I can confidently and comfortably say that, we're a very baseball centric organization. Obviously we're very fan centric, and we try to balance the two. But to be able to bring somebody like Pete to the table, who has that extensive, almost unmatched experience in independent ball, was really I think a huge opportunity, and a huge decision for us, because I've spent the past 2 years giving my input and collaborating with Pete, but really still trying to learn the ins and outs of the independent game, and the roster management and things like that. So it's been a grind, but it's been fun, and it's been rewarding to see some of the successes we've had with guys coming through here like Kumar Rocker, like Brantley Bell, Oscar Campos, who was with us when we were affiliated with the Astros, and then signed back with us last season after he was released, and ended up getting an opportunity to sign with the Mets. So, to be able to try to send those guys back to affiliated opportunities and still have success on the field here and entertain the fans, it's been it hasn't been a straight line by any means, but it's been a fun experience the past couple of years.
Yeah, I can imagine. I imagine that transition to having a baseball organization that is obviously still focused on, getting people in, having an enjoyable experience. But as far as the baseball operations perspective goes, the focus switches from developing these prospects and these players to go win games. And I imagine that is in its own way a rewarding experience to have when you have a team that's set purposes to go out and try to win every game, as opposed to, go try and work on this aspect of your game, prospect, whichever. I imagine that's something that's been a positive change.
Yeah, no doubt. We've always wanted to win, and that goes back to our former principal owner Bill Gladstone would raise that concern anytime we had a losing team from the Astros. But to be able to have your handprint on it as an organization, and to be responsible for it, while it certainly ratchets up the accountability with the fans when they come up to you on the concourse and say, why, what the heck why is he there? Why are you bringing this guy in? Why is this happening? Yeah. But it's exciting. It's gratifying. And it's just a new chapter for us, really.
Yeah, definitely. And you guys put together good teams in the past 2 years, even if it fell a little bit short one day and 2 days short there. And I'm sure, Will, you want to talk a bit about the actual baseball play and the play of the team. So I guess I'll hand it over to you to do that, or take it another way if I didn't speak accurately.
Yeah, no, sure. I think, I guess as far as last season, I know, yes, again, 2 good years, certainly, in Frontier League, play for you guys. I guess from your perspective, what has your sort of analysis been about the team on the field over the last couple of years? And, I guess what are you looking forward to for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think first and foremost, our goal since we joined the league, as we said, was to win a championship and, to compete for one every year. And while we've had two solid teams, we did miss the playoffs both years. So that's disappointing, for us. And, we regroup and we retool, and our goal remains the same. And, I hope and expect, and our plan is to try to get into the playoffs this year, and try to chase down that championship. But 2021 was such a learning curve, and it was such a sort of fast paced process to get the team together. I mean, we didn't join the league until January 7th. I think we hired Pete in February, and then from there, it wasn't like there was an expansion draft and we were picking players off of other people's rosters. We had to put something together from scratch. And spring training, we felt pretty good about the club. We thought we had a good team in place, and once the game started counting for real, we realized we needed to make some changes, and we did that. We were able to bring in some more experienced players as time went on and make some adjustments. I don't think we ever recovered from having I think it was 4 or 5 pitchers signed basically by the time spring training was over. I think we were chasing that the whole year in 21, and I was proud of the way the team rebounded and came together and was in it right till literally the last day of the season to make the playoffs. So, he kind of chalked that one up, and we were able to, I thought, put together a pretty good roster heading into to last season. We had a number of guys coming back. We were able to we got off to a decent start, but then we sort of hit the skids for a while, and we made a number of changes to the composition of the team. I thought we got a little younger, we got a little better defensively. We brought in some additional arms, and that kind of righted the ship. When Cito Culver came over, I thought he really was a difference maker defensively, and just kind of leading the defense really across the infield. Offensively, both years, I think we were, if not the top of the league, we were close to it in quite a few categories. So our priority, really is to make sure that we maintain a high level of offense, but if we can continue to shore up the defense, and like everybody at every level of baseball, we're looking for pitching and pitchers, and I think we have some good pieces in place, but certainly need to continue to build that if we're going to have a successful 23.
And I guess we've seen, and it's not, and you actually just touched on it there as well, that it's not finding more quality arms, and it's not just a Tri-City Valleycats issue. It's not just a Frontier League issue. I mean, it's literally all of Indy Ball. I mean, you could look at how even teams even in the Atlantic League, and you see and certainly the quality of pitching, and trying to find quality arms is a problem. So I guess, do you think that ability to find arms or the process for it is kind of changed in some ways, or how do you guys try and go about doing that to try and get better with it? Because of course, it is a problem. It's like everywhere in independent league baseball right now.
Yeah, and I think it extends beyond just independent baseball. I mean, I remember watching our last couple of years with the Astros, and we had some ups and downs. We had a great year in 18. We had a not so good year in 19, but just watching the development process with some of the pitchers, and it's a good question, but it's to me, I think that in some instances, the way that guys are being developed, and it's a little too cookie cutter in some instances. And I think it's more about, you need to be able to throw this pitch in this way, or, you're not going to make it to the next level in our organization, as opposed to looking at guys that can pitch, that know how to pitch, that understand the mental aspect of it, and can, set a hitter up. Maybe they're not going to have a fastball with a high spin rate that they're going to throw by some guy at the letters, but if they can dot up the outside corner, and they can keep guys off balance with a changeup and a breaking ball that they can throw for strikes, or intentionally throw out of the zone, I think there's needs to be a re-emphasis on pitchability and, understanding how to pitch as opposed to just stuff and spin and velocity. And that's not to say that that stuff is not important. And I'm not saying that the analytical tools are not important, because they are and we use them. But I think sometimes it just becomes a little bit too much of a one size fits all approach in the affiliated world right now. And I think that trickles down as guys are getting released and then coming back to independent ball, coming back to partner leagues. They almost need to sort of retrain their brain in terms of how to attack hitters and how to pitch to their strengths.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point. And I know that a huge college baseball guy myself, and like you look and you watch and some of the pitching at that level. I mean, it's funny. I know you're a BC guy as well, and so that was been a big problem in the BC program as well for the last few years too. And I mean, even you watch like some of these, whether it's conference tournaments or super regionals, and I know that could be a whole other conversation about the bats and stuff like that, but certainly you've seen, velocity is up and these other numbers are up. Well, the runs are also up and, walks are way up. And so, and you might say, well, okay, well, this is college baseball. This isn't the same thing as partner league ball. You're right. But at the same time, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to have 10 rookies on your team. And that's a big part of that. The guys that are not too far removed from college, at the end of the day, you're trying to find value from those rookies. And that's something, of course, and when we talked to Pete Incaviglia, he talked about the importance of trying to find production from those rookies. And so, it's definitely a big problem, I think, as far as arms. And again, it's not just a Frontier League problem. You've seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think the other thing, and this is still something that, we're learning, but I think everybody's adapting, is just seeing how, I'm a firm believer there's still a lot of dust to settle with all the shakeups that were started by Major League Baseball. So I think the major league organizations are trying to figure out how they maximize the partner leagues. And I think the partner leagues are still figuring out how everything fits together, right? I mean, do guys, quote unquote, graduate or move from the Pioneer League to the Frontier League or the American Association, sure, or the Atlantic League? What about the Draft League, which is a hybrid league? So those guys that don't get drafted and stay on and sign a contract, where do those guys go the next year? Most of them look to go to the Pioneer League, or are they jumping to the Frontier Leagues? I think everybody is trying to figure out where those opportunities are. And I mean, of course the position players are critical, but I think a lot of it is driven around pitching.
Right. And I know, Nick, if there's anything, I think that's about all I have, but I think, Nick, if there's anything else you wanted to touch on, for sure. But yeah, certainly, good to hear your perspective, Matt, and a lot of fun conversation around that. We could go on for hours and hours and hours about it, but I know, Nick, if there's anything else you want to add.
Well, there is one pitcher in particular I want to talk about, because when you have people from the Valleycats on, you have to talk about Trey Cochran-Gill. And I just need to know, how aware is, the front office and at least people around the team with the nickname that we gave him? Assuming
the law firm, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. I'm so happy this is taking root. I'm so happy this is taking root. When I heard it mentioned on a broadcast, I was like, "Oh wow, this started to snowball more than it should have." I mean, when you guys started selling jerseys, if I'm not mistaken, I got Trey's number and law firm on the back of it, because I was like, "Do I go Cochran-Gill or do I go with law firm?" I was like, "Law firm. You gotta go law firm."
I like it. Well, I'm a Red Sox fan. I grew up in the Boston area, and I'm a Patriots fan as well. And it reminds me back to Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. I think Chris Berman used to use the law firm nickname for him too. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's the inspiration for it. And being that you're a Boston guy and a BC guy, I have one nonsense question I have to ask everybody, because I like to show off the fact that I actually researched these interviews, despite what some listeners may think. But which is the better arena, Conti or Agnes?
Well, It's a good question.
Yeah.
So I remember going to games back before Aganis was there, and I'm blanking on the name. I think was it Walter Brown? Was the original BU arena?
I think so, yeah.
But I remember going to games there when Mike Sullivan, who's the coach of the Penguins, was on the team. Tony Amonte, who's actually from my hometown, was on the team. So we used to go back and forth. We'd go to the BU games and go to Connie Forum back when Steve Hines was there, the Hemline, Hines, Emma, and McGinnis. I mean, I was always a BC fan growing up, so I got to go Connie, particularly over Aganis. I mean, Aganis is newer. It's obviously got newer features, but I think Connie's just a great place to watch college hockey.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd say that because we mentioned in the pre-interview, but I'm going to mention on the record now. My one friend, he's a big BC guy because he wound up going to BC, and so he always goes ahead and he starts talking about it and go, John, I understand you're a Boston College guy, but I'm a North Dakota guy, so if we want to compare recent resumes here, why don't we settle down? But yeah, I always just love running into hockey fans in any sport too. Will knows I've spent literal episodes of this show just discussing hockey as bonus episodes and whatnot. So I had to ask that's my nonsense question. But with that, you've been very generous with your time, and we'll do the same thing we do for everybody around here, which is we give 5 minutes at the end of the show to say anything you got to say, promote anything you want to promote, circle back to a topic that maybe we went by a little too quick, or go to a topic that we didn't get to or didn't discuss. If you want to do anything like that, the floor is yours to go about and do that.
I don't think I have a ton to add. No. You know, I appreciate you guys having me on. Like I said, we're still new in the partner league and the independent game. So we're learning as we go and trying to build relationships. And, I appreciate you guys reaching out and, look forward to hopefully connecting again at some point.
Definitely. We appreciate you taking the time to do this, and we'd love to have you back on again when we get close to the season and talk some more Valleycat baseball, maybe give fans in the greater tri-state area something to look forward to, a reason to swing on up to Troy. And I know I certainly want to try and get up there this year because I have yet to get up there, unfortunately. So I'm going to make an effort to get up there this year. Right. Thanks again to Matt for coming on the show. Appreciate it. And, we'll be bringing you more interviews going forward. And so on that note, I'm not sure if you want to say anything about either the Pete interview or the Matt interview, Will, but, if you want to, I guess we could talk about that either briefly, or we could just go right to Atlantic League news, either or. Yeah,
I mean, the only thing I'd really want to mention, and I mean, obviously thank you to both of them for coming on, and Matt for setting up the Pete interview as well. And I think that I don't know, it's just really great to talk baseball. I mean, we're two guys that have been in the business, really know the game, and we talk a lot about and honestly just talking about like the kind of where the game is heading and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to hear really both their perspectives, and I really enjoyed conducting it.
Yeah, definitely agree with that point. And so on that note, we will go into the Atlantic League and all that inhabits that. There really is only one major thing from the Atlantic League this week, and that is, of course, the news in Frederick, which is to say what we learned last week from Frederick, but we didn't really discuss too much. A lot of this was kind of already known, but there is some more clarity. We know Frederick's the extra team. We know that they're going to be doing a name-the-team contest. If you win, you get to throw out the first pitch, you get a jersey and 2 season tickets. Everybody that submits a name gets entered into a raffle to win 2 season tickets as well. So that's kind of cool if you're in the general Frederick area. Likewise, Andrew Klein is going to be the general manager for this Frederick Atlantic League team. He's also the general manager for the Frederick Keys. That could be a tall task. They're going to share the same ballpark as well. So it's essentially, it appears as though it's 2 heads on the same body type of setup, where I imagine it's going to be a lot of the same resources that are going towards the Keys are just going to kind of be split off a little bit to send to the Atlantic League. Obviously, with one being in the Draft League, one's in the Atlantic League. The Atlantic League team is going to be a little bit more expensive to run and is going to be a bit of a different animal to run, but they're going to try and use the same support system there. As far as team branding goes, if we're going to touch on that again, it's going to be a grandiose design. And likewise, we know Chuck Domino, who we are familiar with from Charleston, West Virginia team. He is going to also be part of this group, helping to run this team as well. The goal remains that they're going to want an affiliated team still. However, it seems like from the Frederick perspective, that's still 5 to 10 years out because it likely will only come with a new ballpark, and that takes time in and of itself. So the sense I'm getting from here, from all of these different things from this kind of press conference was I understand why you went with Minikasi now. There's history between him and Domino and some experience there. That hire makes a lot of sense. I also gather that this seems to be more of a multi-year solution, which creates a problem for next year when Hagerstown comes in, but that's kind of figure it out when it becomes a problem. And likewise, if I had to venture, and this is certainly on the lower end of everything, I'd guess that the team name is probably going to be Frederick, adjective noun, because if you look at all these other teams, it's Lehigh Valley, Iron Pigs, Rocket City, Trash Panda, Charleston, Dirty Birds. You know, it's always that noun or verb noun or adverb noun or adjective noun. I don't do English grammar. We don't do that. That's not important. I use my words pretty. That's all I do.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm with you. I think it's obviously you got guys who have been around the Atlantic League, and you're kind of putting them into this team, and it'll be. I mean, it's going to be really fascinating to see, like, not only just, I mean, the two teams operating out of one ballpark, but in two totally different leagues. So it's going to be really fascinating to watch, and I think that, and you know, and as you mentioned, like, then of course wanting an affiliated team, I think most of these teams would say that that's what they want eventually. I mean, but I think that you're right. That it's not going to come without a new ballpark, and that's a whole process that's going to take quite a while. So would maybe does Frederick think that, hey, this is our second best option and kind of test it out? I don't know. We'll have to see. But I think, interested to see also the name as well, and because it won't be Frederick Keys, so a new team name there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what would be a decent name for Frederick.
I'm horrible at coming up with names on the spot.
Yeah, and I just don't know anything about Frederick, so.
I don't either, yeah. I know it's in Maryland, but that's about all I know.
Yeah, I got nothing else. I got nothing on the spot, so we'll leave it at that. But yeah, there's some interesting news coming through there. I'll be interested to see when we start getting more and more out of them to see how this operates. Obviously, we're mid-January, near end January now. You'd like to see them starting to get a move on this because we are, 100 days away from first pitch. So you'd like to see some branding get out. You'd like to see some more of a push in the marketing element. You can't really market too well without a brand and without too much to build around when you're just saying, hey, baseball game, want to come? You know, it's a bit easier when you have like, hey, we have a team name, we got a logo, we got designs, we got a bunch of different things that we can do and have fun with. Obviously, you need to have a brand first to do that, and obviously, you need to have a budget too, so you know what you're working with. So I'd hope they have the budget done, and we're getting the brand soon. So that's about all we have Atlantic League wise. There is a yawn in there, but there's also the AAA minor league system using the ABS system that we've seen previously in the Atlantic League this year. I don't really know if we have too much to say about, what's happening in affiliated minor league baseball, but it does kind of connect to the Atlantic League because of the ABS system, an ABS system that we are all well acquainted with and are well knowledgeable of its faults, of which there are many. And I am going to be very curious to see how that translates to AAA baseball, where it certainly will have a wider audience and will certainly have, I think, a lot more focus from major league clubs. So I'll be interested to see if this is the system that wins out or if the challenge system wins out, which frankly seems like a better system. But I'm just curious if you have any thought on that before we go on to the
challenge system in my view is by far like the best system that is out there. I don't want to sound like a broken record because I know I've said it plenty of times before. But the challenge system to me seems to be way better for flow of the game, as well. And I think that, at least for the ABS system, and we know that it's not perfect. It'll be interesting to see. And I think with a lot of guys with MLB experience, it's the big test for the MLB. But if I were to guess, and just knowing, I guess, what people are, because seriously, I haven't seen anybody not like the challenge system. And and there honestly are not that many people who like the ABS that have played with it. So I think that, I think, look, I mean, they're inclined to test whatever they want to test, but I think if I were to guess, and just knowing how this is likely going to go, and basically, I don't want to guess how it's likely going to go because Rob Manfred's dumb. But I think that as far as what the people want, I think the people and the fans and the players, I think they're more looking towards that challenge system as the future, as opposed to the ABS system. So kind of half using it and half not.
I think honestly, a lot of people that are championing the ABS, because I see this actually a lot online. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, thank God the robots are here." I think they haven't really ever watched what the ABS is in action, because either you use the 2D system, which is, slightly better, not by much, but slightly better, or you use the 3D one, which just changes the zone entirely, in which then nobody is happy because the pitchers don't like it.
Yeah, because Nick, I mean, they think the ABS, a lot of people think the ABS system is just what they see on TV, and it's not. Yeah. It's not really. The closest thing I think that you'd probably can come to what the actual system is I believe they use it on ESPN when it's kind of like and I know you don't watch Major League Baseball anymore for reasons I think are wrong, but I think that it's probably what they have on ESPN is like the closest thing that they have, because it'll show like the 3D view of it and like, oh, did it clip like the front corner of the plate or something like that. And that's something you don't really see with the 2D system. So that's more what the reality is, and I think people just haven't really seen it in action, and maybe that changes a little bit with AAA.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case too. I mean, you can't have a 2D zone for something that's 3D, and the 3D zone doesn't really work. I think just a lot of people at this point don't really know what it is, like you're saying, or have a misconception as to what it is. And they just don't like missed calls. And like, on one hand, I'm not going to be the guy that's like, oh, well, missed calls are part of the game. It adds something to it. I don't really think getting a call wrong adds something to it. That said, I also think that some of the things that were being called by that ABS were real tacky. And it's one of those where it's like, if you got the wrong call on that, I'm not upset about it. Like if it just barely clips, I'm like, the best way to call it would be like, in hockey with an offside review, where it's like, if you're just barely over and it's clear you had no effect whatsoever on the play that resulted in a goal, would I be that upset if that goal stood? No, because you just were barely standing over the line, or like you were clearly trying to get back onside or something like that. It's like, you didn't have anything to do with this. It's the same kind of thing with like in baseball. If it's a fractional of an inch type of call going one way or the other, it's like, that is way too close. And if we're in the placement of it's too close to take, then at a certain point I also look at the batter like, yeah, it was a bad call, but why were you taking on something that close, right? So it's one of those types of things where like the egregious ones need to be weeded out. It has no purpose. The ones that are like mid, it's like that doesn't add anything. I'd like to get them solved. But the ones that are quite clearly toss-up coin flip ones, I'm never going to be upset with that going one way or the other. Simply because it was a toss-up, it was a coin flip. If we're in that position, each side has things that they're supposed to do in that case. So, I'm perfectly fine with that. And likewise, I'm also fine with a catcher being able to work on their framing still. I think that adds a lot of value to a catcher position, so I don't want to take that away completely. So I do think the challenge system is probably better because it does still allow for that. But the ABS, it doesn't really work well. It's the only real way to put it. It doesn't work well. Maybe it could be refined in the future, but it's just nothing we've seen from it so far says this is a good system. It should continue to work as opposed to the other system in use.
Yeah, it just doesn't really work well in practice.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what we're looking at here.
Yeah, exactly. So on that note, we do have Pioneer League news. We should probably get to that, before we go way, way long on this. So, Pioneer League, Grand Junction. We had Mick Ritter on back in December. He told me then we're going to be announcing our new manager soon, probably Monday. It has been several Mondays since, but we finally do know their new manager. Their new manager will be a guy that is very familiar to the Indy Ball community, and that is James Frisbee. If you remember Frisbee, he was supposed to be in Lincoln. Then he took a job with the Tigers, I believe it was, and Brett Jody came in and took that position. He was with several other clubs, mainly American Association clubs. He now goes to the Pioneer League. He knows what he's doing as far as being a manager. He has experience. He has all those jazz. We could go through the list and the resume here, but I think he's fairly familiar to a lot of people in this community, so we'll spare the time. And certainly if you want to read the press release all about him, that's linked in the show notes, as is everything here. 6 years in the Central League and Frontier League and the American Association. He's 49. He's the whole jazz. So overall, thoughts on bringing James Frisbee in as manager of the Grand Junction Jackalopes.
Still love the name Jackalopes, but Frisbee, look, he's been around the block. He has been around the block. He's been to every league possible. You kind of know what you're going to with him. I mean, he's not like a knock your socks off like that. It's not a hire that'll kind of blow it out of the park. But it's a solid hire. I mean, it's a guy that's literally he's done everything there is to do at Indy Ball to this point. And so I think there's definitely a plus for that type of experience. But at the same time, it's not like the ceiling is unbelievably high, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Being in the Pioneer League, I don't want to disparage any of the Pioneer League because I think there's some really good managers over there. I think there's some good baseball over there, but it also is the Pioneer League. It is among the core four, probably the lowest of them, just because they have younger players, and that's going to kind of limit there. More than that, though, I see exactly what you're saying. It isn't the Atlantic League. It isn't, some of these more prestigious leagues, so there is a limit to it. But he is, like I say, he's only 49, so it's not like he's that old, right? So you have that working for you. You have a guy that knows what he's doing working for you. Although I do kind of wonder, because he's jumped to Major League Baseball a couple times now, I wonder how long he's going to be there. And I don't doubt that between the independent experience and working with Major League Baseball, that's kind of how this one kind of came about, where both sides were like, yeah, he's good. You could hire him. So, it also is just an awkward kind of position to come in to a team that won the championship last year. And now you have to go ahead and jump right in and kind of continue that success. So I'm going to be very interested to see how they do this year. But I do like the hire. I think he knows what he's doing. And overall, I think it's a fine hire. I don't really have a strong opinion.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. I think that's probably the best way to put it. I think it's a fine hire.
Yeah, exactly. I have no strong opinion on it one way or the other. So hopefully we get to see more out of them, and hopefully it works out really well for them going forward. As far as the other managerial hire, that comes from Colorado as well, but this time Northern Colorado. The Owls have hired Frank Gonzalez as their manager. He joins the Owls after 8 seasons in the Colorado Rocky organization. Most recently, he was the pitching coach at the AAA level in Albuquerque. He's a well-known guy in the area, described by the majority owner of the team as a local legend. And, I suppose this is a guy that, is known in Colorado, spent some time in this general region. He's, kind of a local face that could probably get some people out for that. He obviously has some coaching experience. He only really started coaching in 2009, and that was as a high school head coach. And it says head coach, so I don't want to hear people give me crap on Twitter like the last time I called someone a head coach, and I was told they're a manager. It says head coach right here, so I don't want to hear it. But yeah, so he was the head coach at a high school for 3 years, then joined the Rockies organization 2 years after that. It's I'm gonna be interested to see how he does. There's not really a lot to go off of here, but he seems like a solid enough player. Had a good record and good stat line affiliated ball. He pitched in China for a little bit too, so maybe he does something, maybe he doesn't. It's the Pioneer League, so you never really know.
Maybe he does something, maybe he doesn't, but you never know because it's the Pioneer League. Yeah,
that's a pretty fair way to describe the Pioneer League.
I think it is. So yeah, I think that the local connection is good. The fact he was a pitching coach in AAA, I honestly think this is one of the better ones. Just looking at kind of the resume on paper, and I think that he knows what it takes to kind of reach the higher levels of the minors as well. So, and seems like a solid coaching tenure as well. So I think it's a pretty solid hire overall.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll agree with that. And, the last hire and last bit of news we have for the week is out of the Boise Hawks organization. The Hawks announced that Jimmy Johnson, not that Jimmy Johnson, the other Jimmy Johnson, will be joining the field staff as the director of scouting. He has over 50 years of professional baseball experience, and you may know him if you're a Pioneer League guy because in 2021, he managed the Grand Junction Rockies, currently the Grand Junction Jackalopes, that same organization. He managed for them prior to Bobby Jenks getting that job. So, yeah, he knows the Pioneer League. He knows baseball. I do like it. Obviously, they weren't very good last year. That's not really news to anybody. That's not saying anything controversial. They did not have a good year. So bringing in a guy that knows baseball, knows scouting. I believe he's also involved with the USPBL as well. And if I'm not, or was at least at one point, I don't know why I think that. I think that was a thing. And I know he worked with the California Winter League in the past as well, too. So obviously a guy that has connections, knows how to look, and can hopefully bring in some more talent and get Boise back to being competitive again.
Right. I think you mentioned it because at the end of the day, Boise really needed a kind of a jolt. And they needed to make some changes after a really rough year last year. So I will say it's an interesting jump from manager of another team like Grand Junction to, even though granted that was 2021, Grand Junction, but kind of making the jump from being a manager for another team to director of scouting on another team. But I guess it's like a less of a grind, like day to day. So I think it's, it seems like a solid move. And they, ultimately this is a move that Boise, they had to try something different. They had to try and do something else, because last year, they have not been very good really since this, they were not very good last year. So, and I don't know if this is the move that'll put them over the top, but again, they had to try something different.
Yeah, definitely. I like it. It's just bringing in an extra set of eyes and trying to get more guys, better, higher quality player, on the team. So I definitely like it from that perspective there. There's that. And, the only thing I have left to say before we go to the plugs is because I mentioned the USPBL, I had to go to their website real quick. And I gotta be honest with you, their pricing on a lot of their stuff, because I'm looking at their merch right now, is actually pretty good. Like, they got jerseys for under $50.
Oh.
Yeah, they got some of these shirts too. Like I see this one like beaver print shirt. It's not the best looking one in the world, but only $8. Another couple of shirts, $20. I saw some hats between 20 and 30. Overall, I mean, man, these are not terrible prices. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Well, if the USPBL was trying to overcharge, like, I'd be concerned too.
Like they need to. They only have one ballpark.
Exactly. Yeah.
Honestly, like this one's actually pretty cool. Like this one, kind of like, you know, like the dry weave kind of material, those types of shirts. This one's pretty solidly priced, $18 for it.
That'll play.
Yeah, like that's pretty solid. But yeah, enough talking about USPBL gear. Although some of it's really not bad. I may circle back to that when I get paid. I don't know, but we're gonna leave that for now. We're gonna go to the plugs and then we're gonna get out of here. So if you want to follow the show, you can do so on Twitter at Indy Ball Pod. You can do so on Instagram at ALPB_news and at Indy Ball Report. You can also find everything we mentioned today, links to everything in the show notes. Show notes are on IndyBallReport.com. So swing over there, and we are finally going to get around to starting to get some newer content up via YouTube and mainly the website, posting articles and whatnot. So be on the lookout for that. Check back there. Check there at least once a month, I would say. I'm going to try to get at least one article or video up a month. I think that's a fairly realistic goal. So that's going to be your headquarters for everything. Check the website when in doubt. So you can find the show on pretty much every podcast platform: TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, the whole 9 there. And likewise, we mentioned last week that the episode will be up on Friday. Didn't come up on Friday, and that episode I'm talking about is over on Ryan's YouTube channel, Indy Ball Nation, and I believe he's also on all the same platforms we are podcast-wise. He puts up an audio version, although there is a video version, obviously, YouTube. So if you want to check that out, you can check that out, but I jumped on there. We were supposed to talk about some wonky scheduling in the Atlantic League where like some teams never really travel at all. Like Long Island doesn't ever go to Lexington or Gastonia, or I think it's West Virginia. Like they get some real favorable scheduling. It's very weird. He talks about, if you want to, we were going to talk about that, but then we wound up going on a tangent, which I told him you shouldn't have invited me on. That's what was going to happen, but it's entertaining. So be sure to go over and listen to that once you're done here. So with that said, do we have anything else left to add?
I have to say, so it was the first time that I've flown out of JFK when I went to Vegas this past week. And I never want to hear people complaining about Newark Airport again. And it's not even that I've had bad experiences at Newark Airport, because for the most part they've been good. I mean, JFK is the worst by far. It's not even close. I mean, the TSA lines are like over like it took me 50 minutes to get through TSA. Never had that problem anywhere else. And not to mention, like they switched my gate, which is fine, but then switched it to a different terminal like 2 hours before the plane was supposed to take off. So I had to get on another shuttle, switch terminals, and then my plane sits on the runway for 30 minutes because their gate isn't open. So to be honest with you, I see lots of people complain about Newark Airport, and I honestly kind of like it. I think it's pretty solid. JFK is by far the worst, and it's not even close. That's all I have to say.
There's a lot going on there. I hope you were allowed to bring a mini bat on the plane, though.
No, see, I'm not allowed to bring a mini bat. So yeah, make that be a PSA for everybody. If you want to buy a minor league mini bat, like I do, like, hey, like for an Indy Ball minor league team, like, hey, I've been to, like, I'll never go to a Las Vegas Aviators game. So, hey, I want to buy a mini bat, and you cannot bring it on the plane.
See, what I want to know is, why exactly you can't, because I refuse to believe a mini bat is that dangerous of a weapon.
Am I going to take it out of my carry-on and start beating people over the head with it? Like, I don't understand here.
Yeah, like that's why I'm not quite grasping here. Like, sure, I could kind of see it being a problem, but even still, I just don't largely see it. And personally, this is why I think we should be able to have like U.S. postal terminals in airports. So that way, if you wanted to, you could just go over and mail it to your destination.
Interesting.
I think that's perfectly fine because already
that's interesting.
It's a federal building anyway, seeing as it's an airport. You know, like what exactly is the difference there? Like you could just toss a small postal one. Obviously not a full scale operation. You're not having a distribution base on it, but why can't you just have essentially a courtesy counter right there where you go, hi, I want to mail this and whatever it is. Obviously, you know, if it's wrapped in a box or something, I could totally get you not wanting to have, you know, packages like that there. But in the case of yours, or say, if I was trying to ship like a bottle of wine or something back and I wasn't allowed to bring that on the plane, I feel like I should be allowed to go ahead and mail that. I don't see what the issue is. Hell, you can even mark up the rate there because you kind of got them by the balls while you're stuck in an airport. So, you know, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I mean, like, even a markup from the USPS is still cheaper than sending anything via FedEx or UPS. And also it gets there and it's done correctly. I really don't like FedEx or UPS, or UPS especially. They always misdeliver my shit. But
I've never really had a bad experience with the two, but I mean, yeah, and that is an interesting idea that I've never thought of before, though.
Yeah, like I never really quite understood that. Like it just made a lot of sense. And like if you're concerned about like any sort of crime with that, I would hope that with all the extra security you keep in an airport that is deemed necessary, that you could prevent basic mail fraud or something along those lines. And likewise, fun fact, tampering with the mail in any sort of capacity is a felony. So I don't think the average person is going to be like, oh, let me just quickly yoink on a piece of mail, because that's a very fun way to do 15 years in a federal penitentiary.
For the benefit of a minor league mini bat.
Yeah. So like I said, I think a mail, you know, terminal inside a airport is not a terrible idea. That's all I'm going to say. But in any case, I don't really have anything left to add other than I was at the Princeton game on Tuesday, and Jack Cronin scored one hell of a goal. It was fantastic. And I look forward to going back down to Princeton in a week from now, because on the 28th, I'll be back down there as well. And this time, if I see Mike Ashmore sitting up in the press box like I did last time, I'm going to take a picture and post it on Twitter and go, hi, Mike. And just see what he says.
I'm sure he'd like that.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure I'd get some sort of sarcastic comment that would make me feel bad. But, you know, at the same point in time, it's not going to stop me. If anything, it's just going to embolden me more. But,
exactly.
But in any case, yeah, I'm just still like all caught up about the fact that the USPBL pricing is pretty reasonable. I'm not going to lie. So with that information you have, we'll be back hopefully with an interview next week. If not, definitely the week after we'll have one for you. But until then, don't forget to play ball.